It's great to see so many people here this morning for this very special event. Welcome. My name is David Duss. I'm the president of the Academy of Scoring Arts, and we are so excited to be hosting this event for you all today. We are in collaboration with the Fans of Film Music, who are celebrating 11 years. And in a moment, we'll be speaking with John Powell, and I know he'll have a lot of great insights into his career. It'll be moderated by Kaya Savas. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions too, so you can put them in the chat if you have them throughout the entire event. I would love to tell you a little bit more about what is going on at the ASA, because there's a lot of really exciting things that we have been doing. Let me share my screen for a second. So we just finished an incredible study of James Horner's Apollo 13. And we were really honored that James is no longer with us, obviously, but we had the original orchestrator for Apollo 13, Steve Bramson. He joined us for 4 sessions. And those sessions were all recorded. They're all up on scoringarts.com. We are also planning for some upcoming events that I think will be of interest to many of you. Let me show you. On Halloween, we are planning to hit Psycho, Bernard Herrmann Psycho, for a score study, and I'll look at the music in that movie. Beyond that, we also have, we are working on upcoming studies of Rhapsody in Blue, that classic jazz score by George Gershwin. And then our big enchilada that we are getting started on, Back to the Future. We are working on a Back to the Future study, and that'll be probably a long form study where we look at Alan Silvestri's score and just take that apart and figure out how he got those iconic sounds and how it worked to picture. So eventually, I mean, John's coming up now for an interview, but I also wanted to mention that his How to Train Your Dragon score has just been published by Omni. I'll share my screen there so you can see it. This is a landmark thing. Film score scores do not get published very often. Omni is one of the very few companies doing it. They have just published How to Train Your Dragon. So any of you who are interested in checking that out, I definitely recommend you do that. And maybe if it's possible, we may have John in to talk about it, or one of his other scores. So just a little bit about the background of the Academy of Scoring Arts. We've been studying film, TV, game music for 10 years now. Pretty much anytime music intersects with visual media, we love to talk about it. And we've been having our regular studies, usually in person, but now obviously streamed over the internet. There are more than 150 studies up on our website, which I do want to highlight just for a second. This is just a quick look at some of the things we've studied. Jeff Beal, Bear McCreary, Debussy, Chris Bowers, Michael Abels. We've had some amazing guests, jazz, film, you name it, game, TV, music, all across the board. So these are all uploaded. They're available to our members who join us. If you are not already a member, I know many of you came in via the Eventbrite ticket. We highly recommend that you check out at minimum our chamber membership. It's entirely free. So there's nothing except just the sign up process. And when you sign up for chamber membership, we'll instantly give you access to 6 free videos, which include Talk with Gordy Hobb, Star Wars Battlefront, John Ottman, Holst Planet Study, Jeff Beal talking about House of Cards, Planet of the Apes with Emil Richards before he passed. These are pretty amazing studies. And just in case you miss any part of today's event with John Powell, we'll also make that available to chamber members. So to answer the question that I did see in the chat earlier, if you are not already a member, please do consider joining our chamber level. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Peter Hackman of the Fans of Film Music, and he will be just getting us set up for our event today and introducing our moderator. So take it away, Peter. Over to you.
Well, this is not exactly how I thought I'd be celebrating 10 years of Fans of Film Music, but the fact that we're still able to do it via the World Wide Web is cool. Thank you to everyone who registered and who will be watching from all over this COVID-infected world. I hope you and yours are safe during this insane time we're all living through. And thank you to Kaya Film Music Media for hosting this year. And thank you, John Powell, for agreeing to hang out with some nerdy film score friends, myself included. You can find more about Film Music Media on the internet at filmmusicmedia.com. Thank you to our friends at the Academy of Scoring Arts for collaborating with us this year. It's a true honor to be working side by side with you. Check them out on the web at scoringarts.com. And for those who got an autograph ticket, all your packages have been shipped and are making their way back to you. This year we dedicate our 11th annual event to the memory of our friend Craig Rogers, who passed away August 15th. Craig had been to every single event from year one. He had been an avid collector and listener of film music since the 60s. Craig was a sponsor of our event and was one of our best friends. We miss him and hope he's tuning in upstairs as we start Fans of Film Music 11. And you can check us out at fansoffilmmusic.com on the web. And for those that can vote, please do. Okay, I've bored the world long enough. Kaya, take it away, my friend.
Hey, Peter, how's it going? Thank you so much. And welcome to Fans of Film Music 11. My name is Kaya Savas. I am the moderator for today's event. And thank you for joining us from wherever you are around the world. Thanks for tuning in with us. I hope you're safe, as I echo all the sentiments that David and Peter just mentioned. And of course, thank you to Peter and Fans of Film Music and David of Academy of Scoring Arts for hosting this amazing event today and for inviting me to moderate. So let's just jump into it. Let's welcome our guest, Mr. John Powell. John, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, John, how's it going?
Very good. Am I heard? Am I cognizant on this microphone and everything?
You are heard. You are well heard. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, John. Nice and bright and early. I got my cup of coffee, so I'm ready to get into it. John and I, we've done a couple of interviews in the past. If you want to go check them out, Film Music Media. So I'm going to try to, not go into super specific detail or rehash things that John and I went over in the past, but we'll do a comprehensive thing. So let's start off just with a basic question, John. Going back to your, I guess, early childhood or kind of the early years. Why music? Why not biology or accounting? What was it? What was the catalyst that kind of set you on this path to where you are today?
Dyslexia, I think. No, I didn't really realize. I think I like to tell people that my the founding moment of my life's crises, well, the first crises in my life was being given glasses and told that I would have to wear these for the rest of my life, and I remember it striking me through the heart. But it was at least an explanation. That was an explanation as to why I was really shit at school. This would be 6 years old, and then I got to 7 and discovered the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto played live at a rehearsal at the Brighton Dome that my father was playing in, and I just couldn't think of anything else all the way home. Asked if I could play the violin, and then we were off, really. And then I found that, and the first time I got out of something by doing music was that as well. Is like after a few months of playing the violin, they said, oh, he seems to be moderately capable. So then my father said to me, well, if you're interested in the violin and you're doing quite well at it, I guess we are going to have to stop you playing rugby on a Sunday, which I fucking hated. On a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. in England over the winter, and I was small, so I was a fly half, so everybody just would jump on me, and I hated it. And so playing the violin got me out of this, got me out of the thing I didn't want to do. It all fell into place then, and that's basically what I've done for the rest of my life, is get out of what I don't want to do by doing something that I'm okay at,
Well, I know in the past we've kind of talked about your kind of early starting your career working in advertising jingles, and so you composed a lot of this kind of commercial work. What did you learn from that kind of helped you get started when you started writing to feature films and shows and stuff like that?
I mean, you just get, I like the diversity of it. And I was really doing it to make some money to carry on doing the other thing I was doing at the time, which was a lot of art installation music and performance art music. I wasn't doing concert music, as it were. There just didn't seem to be any way to do that. But Gavin Greenaway and I had a collaboration with a friend of ours called Michael Petrie, who we're still collaborating with today, on lots of crazy art installation pieces, and the money from doing jingles seemed to buy equipment, which allowed me to write more for that as well. So it seemed a good way of sort of funding the art.
Right. What kind of products were you scoring for?
Oh, everything from, you know, the one that I'm always embarrassed is I did the water privatization, which was actually Handel's water music, but I don't know, about 8 arrangements of that. You know, the idea of privatizing water is just terrible to me. I'm afraid that's one of the things that I would never do now, but at the time, you know, you need the money. And
right.
I mean, I drew the line at certain things. I didn't do anything to do with the military, and I didn't do anything to do with nuclear power, which I still am not really keen on. I've done smoking adverts because even though I've never smoked and cigarettes, you know, killed my father. I mean, that's people, you know, at the time, I think I felt, well, you know, if people are going to be stupid enough to smoke, of course, now we know that it's not that they were stupid, that we were being lied to constantly by the PR companies, these very clever PR companies that had been hired by the cigarette manufacturers. So I think I probably wouldn't do that now, but you know, you have to accept that what you're doing is writing music, yes, but what you're doing is you're helping sell something, and the idea of selling something requires you to sort of leave some of your scruples behind, I think.
Yeah.
I did learn that what people need in their adverts is really the same as what they need in films, which is music to help affect an emotion or a response. So it's about manipulating people, you know.
Yeah, just manipulating their emotions so you can get what you want out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously better if it's a story rather than a product.
Right. So what made you relocate to Los Angeles in that point in your life? You know, you were working with Gavin, your good friend. What kind of gauged you to jump over here?
Well, I'd helped Hans out on a couple of things. The first one was a Christmas rescore, and he had like 10 days to rewrite a whole score. So he brought in, you know, a couple of people, and one of them didn't use equipment. And Maggie Rodford, who ran Airedale, the advertising company that I was working for, had also worked with Hans, and Hans knew her very well. So I remember meeting him at Airedale, and you know, he was smoking, of course, and he sort of sized me up. And I was one of the few guys at Airedale at the time who had a lot of equipment. So I got brought in to help program, you know, other composers' sort of additional cues. In this case, Fiachra Trench, who's a wonderful Irish composer. And so I would just basically sit there and program, you know, up the stuff using Hans's sounds, and that's how he got to know me. And then I did a few other little things for him. And one of the days he said, you know, if you know, you should come over to LA. We're always busy and we've got so much stuff on. And it was a year before I then went, and I walked through the door, and he kind of in his dark room, he looked at me as if to say, "Who the fuck are you?" So I was worried I'd left it a bit long, but then once he got out of, you know, whatever he was focused on and realized who I was, he was very sweet, of course, and that's the beginning of sort of my Hollywood career.
Right. So we talked about this a few months ago when we were discussing Forces Nature, and we talked about confidence. And so were you confident as a young composer, especially when it came to the time to, you know, maybe doing your first feature or your first project? Did doubt ever creep into your head? Does it ever creep into your head now? Like, how do you manage, I guess, being confident in what you do and making sure that brings out the best out of you?
Well, as I've been thinking about this a lot recently and discussing it, which is 40,000 years of the male dominance of our world has brought everybody who's male up to think they can do anything. And I guess I'm the beneficiary of that, for that, you know, but I am massively doubtful of everything. But I guess there's this sort of patina of confidence that we're all taught. you know, or society is just embedded in you know, in the male psyche that we should be able to do everything, you know. It's obviously especially white male. So I
Right.
mean, I'd say you know, that's probably take part of that effect, and then also just I don't know, I loved music and loved playing music and loved playing with it, and I'd done so much of it. I mean, if you start very young and you give your life from age 7 to just doing that, I mean, I really wasn't doing anything else. I have no education whatsoever, other than music. So I'd just done it so much. I think I'd done every conceivable kind of thing that you could possibly do at that age. Every instrument, every style, every ensemble style, and then started to, you know, organize music and write music, arrange music. I just guess I'd done such a lot that you keep that going. You know, being put in harder and harder situations in adverts gives you this thick skin that allows you to, you know, write music while everyone is sitting on the couch behind you.
Yeah.
They come in, you've spent 2 days on something, they come in and they listen to it and they don't like it, and you have 2 hours to come up with something else, and they're not going to move. It's like, okay, well, give me a minute, but no, they're not going to move. They just sit there. And so, you know, the first time I was horrified. But, you know, after you've done that 10, 15 times, you don't care. And all of that, I guess, builds up some scar tissue that sort of protects you from realizing that you could, you know, you could collapse and fall. If you do something that seems to push you to the edge enough times and you don't collapse, then I guess there's a sort of an inbuilt confidence of, I'll probably be able to do this. All I ever needed to do with adverts, and the great thing about adverts was that you could sort of set the bar low, was I just need to get something done by tomorrow morning, or I need to get something done by Friday, or I need to get something done in the next hour, because they're coming. And over and over and over, the repetition of that process of actually getting something, and whether or not it was right or not, or it was close, or it was brilliant, or it was not as shit as they would notice, then, you know, that just builds in this kind of repetitive success. You know, and I put success in inverted commas, because all you need is to know that you're not going to fail. You're not going to fail. Something will happen, and that confidence just allows you to sort of keep working, and be pretty, you know, pretty okay with the idea that you're not going to have a lot of time, and that people are going to expect a lot of you. And as it builds and builds and builds, and the things get more and more important, the question is, do you, you know, obviously the trick is to select things that aren't too far out of your realm. If I'd suddenly, you know, I remember I went on holiday and I got a call from Hans. This was before I come out to LA, and I was sort of just in my early relationship with Hans. I got a call from Hans, and I was, you know, I was 8 hours away from London. I would have had to, and I just got there within 5 minutes of arriving there. I got a call, and he was asking me if I'd come back and do orchestration. And I'm shit at orchestration as far as written orchestration. I mean, I can do it in the gear, but that isn't what he needed. He needed, you know, orchestrators. And he called me, and he didn't really know me well enough. And he said, Johnny, you're classically trained. You could probably do orchestration, can't you? And it was one of those decisions where you either go, yeah, absolutely, I can do whatever you want. And then I would have driven 8 hours back to London and then been really, really shit at it. So I then had to have the confidence to go, actually, you know, I can do stuff in the gear well, as you know, but once we get onto paper, there are people who are much better at it than I. So, and much faster. And probably if you need something quick, it would take me too long. You know, and I've probably bullshitted about, you know, details of balance and, you know, and timbre and shit like this. And he probably thought, oh, I see, he's, you know, I don't think he assumed that I couldn't do it, but I think I gave him the message that I wasn't going to be the best person for it. And then, but after that conversation, then of course I freaked out thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I've just told Hans Zimmer no. And how am I going to get back from this? You know, so.
Well, I think it worked out because, I want to go to your first feature film, which was Face Off. And it doesn't happen often that a new composer gets to work with a great, auteur filmmaker who's, established such a huge career at that point. So what are your memories of working on Face Off, getting that gig, and of course, working with John Woo?
Well, actually, the first one I was really on was Endurance with Hans. And
That's
Hans
right, yeah.
introduced me, he said, and I was doing adverts in LA for his company, and I was doing song arrangements and doing bits and pieces. And everything I did was kind of weird and wonderful and wacky. And so Hans said, you should meet, I've got to do 2 films with this filmmaker called Terrence Malick. And I didn't know who it was at the time. I hadn't seen any of his films. And so we met with Terrence Malick on Endurance, and I started work on that and did about a good half of the film, maybe 3/4 of the film. And then they wanted to go away and do some reshoots. And then at that point, Hans had, I guess, been impressed by what I was doing. And that's when the call came in from John Woo to Hans, is can you score this movie? And of course, Hans was on 3 other things. And he, even though Hans and I, with the Terrence Malick film Endurance, we were supposed to be, I was helping Hans, but then I eventually got the gig on my own. But even at that point, Hans wouldn't have just pushed me forward. Whereas on Face Off, by the time he'd seen the work I'd done on Endurance, he was confident enough to say, I can't do it, John Woo, but this kid can, and I'll produce it and give a guarantee. And that was good, and then, so they tested me out. They said, well, okay, well, here's one of the, I think it was the airport chase, which at the time I think was about 14 minutes.
Yeah, it's like a 2-hour, 40-minute action film. So the John Woo action sequence is a hefty thing.
Yeah, but at the time it was 14. I think it ended up about 5.5. So I scored a giant chunk of it, wrote themes and things, and then 2 weeks later presented probably about 10, 12 minutes music to John and the editor, Chris Wagner. And they sat around and they whispered at each other, and they kept saying, and Chris Wagner kept saying to Hans, so which one did you write? Which tune did you write? Because obviously I'd done it I was trying to get the gig. So I tried to make it within Hans's world, that I knew they wanted Hans. They didn't want me. You don't get a gig like, somebody comes to you and says, well, do you want to try out for this film? I can't do it. I'm iconic. I have an iconic sound. Why don't you try it out? And you go, perfect. I will do it in my style immediately. I mean, that's a quick thing to do. So I kind of made sure I was in, Hans's language. And the thing that Hans and I both share actually is a love of Morricone. So if you look at Hans's tunes and things, you will see a great sort of homage to Morricone. And so I kind of went there with tunes, and then obviously did Hansian arrangements. And they bought it. And so after 2 weeks work, then I got the gig. Then I think I only had about 6 weeks left to do the films.
So yeah, at this point in your career, you've already kind of established yourself, and I know you've had several people in your life that you'd classify as mentors, and people kind of who showed you the ropes, paved the way for you. Of course, big ones being Patrick Doyle and of course Hans. But let's focus on Patrick for a while. What's something that you learned from him, working with him, that you still put into practice today?
He's the one that said to me, he said to me very, very early on, he goes, if you can write a tune, Hollywood will always love you. It's not strictly true, and I've not strictly been able to do it. But I've always kept that in my mind. I think I always felt that he was right, and he's a great tunesmith, and his music is very eloquent and melodic and harmonically you know, joyful and things like that. So I always liked, you know, I think, I can't remember what I was working on with him, Much Ado About Nothing, and a few things where I was just, and we actually did some radio things with Kenneth Branagh where there was no budget. So I would program some, you know, some synth orchestra for him, things like that. And I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing. And but also he was, I probably learned a sense of humor off him as well.
Patrick is fantastic. And of course you work with Hans, and I'm sure that working with him was just you know, almost like your education right there, just kind of growing up, going through the motions with him. Is there something that you still carry from your days with Hans that you still put into practice?
Oh God, yeah, so much. I mean, you know, and there are many of the things I've learnt I still apply. Some of them I fight against, you know, to just be belligerent, which is one of the reasons he liked me. I was deliberately kind of obtuse sometimes. I would do the opposite of what had been suggested, and you know, and it annoyed him and amused him, I think, and intrigued him as well. It's like, well, why would somebody who can do what is obvious, you know, why is he doing something so you know, different and often wrong? But so, you know, a lot of it is, you know, also everything from work ethic. The very first time I worked with Hans, it was that 10 days to rescore a film, and it started 2 days before Christmas Day and ended it was on the had to be on the dub stage on the 3rd of January. So, and I think he arrived in town on about the 22nd of December. So that was the gig. And so I had, you know, an hour on Christmas morning to open presents, and then I went off, and I really wasn't home for all of that Christmas. And, you know, I think I realized very early on that that's what it was going to take. It frightened me, obviously, because but it also excited me enough that I felt, all right, well, if this is what it's going to take, and if I've got this opportunity, I'm going to go all in. And I think that's one of the things that I did. But it's problematic, that kind of approach to, you know, work. It takes away everything else, and it makes relationships very hard, family hard, you know, the people you miss. I mean, just moving from England, I you know, I was leaving behind lots of family, and it was very painful. And then it's one thing if you go abroad to work, but you can come back every 2 months. But, you know, I couldn't. I was back once a year if I was lucky. And that would often be just to record. So,
right. I bet, you know, but now fast forward some time in your life, and of course, speaking of guidance and advice and the roles switching maybe a little bit, I have a fun story I want to bring up. So, you know, of course, I know Daniel Pemberton as well, and he told me a really important moment of his life, which involved you, and maybe you remember this now, which involved hanging with you on the Millennium Bridge in London at 2 a.m. Do you recall this?
Yes. I think that would been my wife, you know, what had been shooting photos with his girlfriend at the time.
Yes.
Right. And that's how we met. And I'd forgotten that until you mentioned it, and I'd forgotten the Millennium Bridge, and we probably chatted, and I probably didn't really remember that bit of it. But I then went go-karting with him and my son a bit, either the next time I was back in London or something like that. And he's a fantastic mind. You know, that's what I obviously must have, you know, enjoyed, and otherwise I would have just kind of wandered away.
Right.
Yeah.
So his side of the story was pretty much that, doing the photo shoot, your wife was shooting his girlfriend, or shooting his girlfriend, and he rode his bike over, and I guess you had a nice, from his story, and I quote, "John is a really awesome guy, just very down to earth and dry and British, and kind of doesn't really give a fuck about the whole Hollywood thing. And he gave me some really good advice, which I still use to this day."
Good.
Do you remember what advice you gave him?
No, I don't. No, I have no idea, because I mean, people ask me these questions, and you know, so you just tap dance and bullshit some stuff out immediately, just like I'm doing now.
Absolutely.
So what do you say? What did I say? What were the words of wisdom that I used? That so
He said he just went. He didn't go into full detail with me. He was just like, oh, he gave me some really good sage advice about dealing with Hollywood.
oh, I see. Okay, you know, honestly, some of that stuff is just knowing the inside story. I mean, those would have been some of the simplest things Hans would have taught me, or Pat Doyle would have taught me. Just the inside story. Just suddenly a light bulb goes on, and you go, oh, I see. You know, I mean, I probably told him also things like, you know, your agent doesn't get your work, you do.
Mm.
The most important person to impress in Hollywood is your agent.
Yeah.
So if you want your agent to go after work for you, you have to make them think you're the greatest thing ever. They're not just you know, you shouldn't be sitting around going, oh, I mean, look, you know I'm going to be brilliant at some point, but my agent doesn't seem to know that.
Right.
So, you know, I have a brilliant agent, and she, you know, she's made my career, but it's been a sort of, like, I was describing much more as a coach than an agent. She coached me through, you know, harder and harder matches. I'm sitting here in tennis gear, having just watched some of the French Open final. So the analogies are going to be tennis based, but you know, you need somebody who can look at how you're doing things and go, you know, if you did this again when you're against this player or this director, you know, you should, you know, you don't need to work that hard, or you need to work harder at this, or I'm hearing from Hollywood that you are this. Do you want to really be perceived as that, or do you want to change it? So, you know, I think probably those would have been the things he was probably asking me about Hollywood, and I probably told him also that my experience of Hollywood was that it's filled with nothing but very creative people.
Mm-hmm.
And that had been my experience. I'd been very lucky. As I say, that one of the first people I ever met was Terrence Malick, you know, who treated me like an artist, and then got good stuff out of me as well.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, sort of thinking that it's all guys with big cigars, sort of, you know, trying to, you know, screw everybody over in some way or other. And obviously there's plenty of that, but that's not what runs Hollywood. Hollywood is a place full of very creative people. So the more creative you are, the more likely you are to become part of of Hollywood. And maybe it helped him realize that he could be as creative as he wanted, and he didn't have to sort of succumb to the idea of sounding like Hollywood. And that, I think, is what's made his career so, you know, so successful, because he sounds like him. Nobody else sounds like Daniel. And it's, you know, and he doesn't live here either, because
right, he stayed in the UK. Yeah,
probably said that as well. I always say, you know, if the question comes up, you know, do you think we should really move to Hollywood? I say, well, it depends how untalented you are. The more untalented you are, the more you should move to Hollywood. Yes. That if you're really talented, you can probably, you know, do it from wherever you are. Look at, you know, sort of Daniel and Pat Doyle and Alexander Desplat. They don't live in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. No, I always bring that up because I think there's a lot of people around the world who go, do I need to move? Do I need to come here? And it is perfectly doable if you're capable and you can do it from your home country and build a career there, for sure. So let's focus on your writing process, like kind of, you know, I'm sure it's going to be different on every film, but do you have any kind of rituals or process? Like, what do you kind of first do when you start writing for maybe the first scene that you got given? Do you start maybe mapping out maybe an arc? Do you kind of like do some sketches and figure out what the arc of the whole film is going to be? Do you just try to find a certain theme first? What's kind of your approach?
It keeps changing, and I can tell you one or two of them, and then I would immediately change my mind and realize that I've done it totally differently in other ways. It's a bit random sometimes. I think the first thing is to try and understand the film. Really understand the film and understand the story, and hold that in your head. Another piece of very good advice from Pat Doyle that he told me is he watches what he does is he takes the first reel and or first couple of reels, basically he watches a portion of the film on a Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning, 5 days. So he splits, he watches the whole film all together, and then he goes back and he watches, reel 1 and 2 on Monday morning, 3 and 4 on Tuesday, etc. So then he just spends the day thinking about it. He doesn't write at all. So that's one I've used. The John Williams one, which is start with the hard cue and then go backwards. So make sure it works where you really need it to work, and then you can just, you can dissect it and build that out across the whole, the rest of the movie going forward, so that it appears to come together at the end, and that's the E.T. kind of example, if you listen to the score of E.T. And many others of his. I've also done the just start at the beginning and keep going. I've done the, one of the techniques I use for writing is I just improvise at the piano to picture sometimes, and I record everything on MIDI. And then I go through and I search for bits that I like, and I cut them and color code them. And then I come back the next day and I have a listen sort of afresh just to the little colored bits, and see, and I color them red if I think it's very good, and pink, and they go down to sort of, brown if it's there. Okay, as long as it's different so I can spot it. And then I just listen to those bits, and from that you hear little shapes or rhythms or harmonic changes. And I just start collecting things. So it's a question of, I wish it was start and it comes out perfect. It certainly doesn't. I work generally into Logic, but sometimes I've worked on the piano with score paper, guitar with score paper, the piano just in somewhere else with a tape recorder. I've started by writing things on marimbas. I've started by writing things on accordion, anything, a lot of MIDI devices that change how I play, so that it changes the notes, because I'm a terrible pianist. And so I hit cliches all the time, and I can transform them. It sounds much more interesting to me. I have weird sort of isometric, I can't remember what they're called, keyboards that are little hexagonal dots, and they're laid out very differently, so you can't play like a normal keyboard. I try anything just to not be bored with it, because as soon as I start writing, I am instantly bored, and that's bored with what I'm writing. So I then have to try and find the next step, which is there anything in there? And the confidence you talked about in the first question is, my confidence is, well, this is rubbish, this is rubbish, this is rubbish, but probably I'll end up with something okay. So I just have to keep going. I'll keep trying, keep things, and eventually something will come up. And as I say, so that's the thing, is to listen with one ear and write with, don't be so into what you're writing that you think it's genius. You have to just allow something to come and look for shapes. I wish I heard things in my head, but I really don't. I hear emotions, maybe I hear feelings, I hear maybe tempos or like pulses and simple stuff like that, but I don't hear anything fully formed in any way.
All right, let's focus on writing for genres. I think you have, very early in your career, if you go look at it, I always commend it, because you never got pigeonholed. You were scoring comedies, romantic comedies, animation, action, and I thought that was very interesting, and the fact that you're able to apply yourself to those things. But I want to focus to first start with action, because early on in your career, you did score some action. Of course, the Bourne series being a very famous example, that you got to team with Doug Liman and later with Paul Greengrass. But for that first film, can you take us through that process for you, and what was scoring the Bourne series like, especially since you were actually a replacement composer coming in at the last second?
Yeah, being a replacement composer really helps because at least you know where they've been and where they don't want to go. So, I mean, you know, I'll always be thankful to that composer for having sort of pushed Snow out the way, you know, for us to realize.
It was Carter, wasn't it? It was Carter Burwell.
It was,
Yeah.
and I've never heard the score, but it, you know, I think it was just not different enough for Doug. I mean, I think he was looking for everything to be very more unusual. You know, he was looking for a sort of an anti-Bond and a, you know, an indie Bond. So it couldn't sound like Bond. It couldn't sound like a spy thriller in any way. It couldn't sound like anything we kind of knew. It couldn't sound like a normal action film. And I got lucky at the time, apart from getting the call, was that I was trying to sort of, I'd been extricating myself from Hans's organization, not because I don't love Hans, but because it was proving harder and harder for me to do things without the shadow of such an influence.
Right.
And I maybe did it more inelegantly than I should have done. So, but I think, you know, I think we're all right now. But at the time I was certainly thinking, well, however I do this, I should try not to do it the way that, you know, anybody at remote control or at that time Media Ventures would do it. So, you know, even just sounds were like everything we did on action then, you know, at the time, up to then was big sounds and, you know, these kind of giant sort of string sounds and brass and things and big kind of drums, huge drums. And so I went the other way and I used a very deliberately small string section. Also, they had no more money. They'd spent most of it. And just dry programming, very, very different kind of stuff that wouldn't have ever fitted in the, you know, sort of the Jerry Bruckheimer way of scoring, you know, action movies. So I was on a, you know, I was working in an inversion of what everyone was used to, and Doug was trying to do that, and I think that just got everything kind of in the right place. I mean, I would also say that, however, I had been trying to do that kind of stuff throughout my career, and so if you go back and listen to, there's bits of Face Off where I'm probably trying to sound like I do, but it's big sounds and it's everything's not quite there, you know. And also the less is more thing as well, you know. Maybe I was tired of, you know, the idea that an action movie had music that started in first frame and ended at the end, and there was literally it never stopped. I always thought that was it was rather dull. I mean, in the right hands, it can work well, but often there's just endless music and you can't really hear it. It's just sort of wallpaper. Whereas in the 60s and 70s, if you think of some of the great sort of John Barry kind of action scores, you know, or Jerry Goldsmith, you know, there's a lot less music than there was in the 90s. So I was being reactionary, I think, and that probably set the tone right there and then, and also knowing that Doug was sort of, you know, he was diametrically opposed to everything that he thought was what an action film was. And I think that the score before, even though Carter does really wonderfully sort of different scores, it just had too much of that sound in it. It would have been a full orchestra and it just wasn't saying something different enough, I guess. So it was sort of easy, but it was a painful process because none of us knew it was going to work at all. So you were always working against this knowledge that things didn't work this way normally. Why would we expect it all to work together? You know, the dub was very hard. Famously, I had to write the opening scene with the, you know, floating, had a bass guitar being played up very high, like, you know, who's the band that did Blue Monday? You know, they had a bass player who always used to sort of play the tune, not the bass part. I like that.
Right.
So I'd kind of done the tune on the bass part, and I really liked it, and it's on the album. But when we got to the dub, you know, the sound effects just died. The bass on the tune, it was just in the frequency that just never worked. You could never hear it, and it just sounded like there was just a held chord ish, and that was it. It was nothing else. So it didn't really work, and that's when I changed it to the bassoon so that we cut through the sound effects. But all the way through the dub, it was like, does this work? Is it going to work? It wasn't working the way that everybody was used to. So even the guys, the sound effects and the dubs, everybody was like, how are we supposed to make this work? The score does not do what it's supposed to do for an action film. And so it was a bit of a fight, you know, all the time. But, you know, everybody I think realized that I always like to say that the great thing about Doug is that he set up a sort of an expectation that he wanted it to be completely different, and he wasn't going to let us leave until it was. And so I think everybody on the dub stage looked at each other and said, okay, well, we better figure this out and work together. And it was one of the best sort of dub experiences I'd ever had, even though I was there. Composers should never be at the dubs. But I was editing a lot of music and trying different things out, and, you know, messing with the score quite a lot until we really figured out how to do it. So the compositional process, you know, started after a conversation with Doug on the phone, where he was in and out of taxis in New York, and I started writing, and then it really didn't finish until the end of the dub.
Wow. Well, I've been told, I'm just going to feeding some information here from our co-host. The band was New Order and Peter Hook on the bass.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of, you got to work with a great director, Doug, and I was wondering if you could, because I love the story and you told it once, but I think it deserves a retell, the story, the bet that Doug lost on.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that was at the dub stage, and that's when it was all coming together, and we were getting like 3-4 days before the end, and it was really starting to work, I guess. And I think somebody, you know, one of the, you know, the mixers said to Doug, you know, so, you know, say, I think this could be a hit, you know, Doug. And Doug was like, no way. No, we'll be lucky to like get out of single figures on this weekend, you know. And then we go, no, this is really working well. I think it could work well. He was adamant. He goes, I bet you anything you like. So he bet, he said, if this film does, you know, $100 million, it'll never do $100 million. If this film does $100 million, I'll come back and I'll stand on the dub stage, credenza, and I'll smear Bengay on my bollocks. And, you know, obviously he was quite confident it was not going to get to 100 million. And 4 days after it hit 100 million, we all got a call. Doug wants to see you all at the dub stage. And he came, and he had his assistant with a large bucket of ice. And we didn't get to see any flesh, thankfully. He took a large load of Bengay, stood on the credenza, shoved it down the front of his pants, and then described the experience, which lasted about 90 seconds before he ran screaming to the bathrooms. And you know, so he's always been a man of his word, Doug, and you know, you can always trust him. If he makes a bet, he will pay up. So
that's good to know.
Yeah.
So just kind of piggybacking, you know, just on this idea of being a replacement composer, it is part of the industry. It's part of the job. You've been, you know, fired off projects, other people have been fired projects, but you also replaced Dario Marianelli on Pan. And you were mentioning just kind of the benefits of coming in and knowing what not to do. Was that the same case with Pan, that you came in and this is what wasn't working? And does it make your job easier coming in with that kind of knowledge?
Yes. Yeah, a lot. You know, I mean, it's a sort of a cruel, I mean, there's a famous story of Rachel Portman being fired before she even actually wrote a score for a film because they tempt with music. I don't even think it was her music necessarily. I think it was that fucking asshole who's in jail now, Weinstein.
Weinstein, yeah, probably.
Yeah,
She
he was
scored a lot
famous.
of his films.
Yeah, famous for this. Like he goes to the preview, and the film isn't working. It just because it isn't working, and the score was probably fine. And he turned around and said, "Who's doing the music for this film?" And they said Rachel Portman. And you know, Rachel's a great composer, so she could have made the film work for all we know.
Yeah.
And he just turned around and goes, "No, fire her." She hadn't written a note. You know, there are a lot of things that are about why composers get fired, and it often isn't to do with the quality of their music or whether or not they can write music. I mean, that's been proved many times with Dario Marinelli, and you know, it's not about that. It's all about sometimes the last ditch effort to try and figure out, you know, if you can make something change, make something different. Making a film is a very long, complicated process. There's a lot of people in it. Everyone in theory wants to make the best film possible. The likelihood of that happening is very small. We know this. But sometimes they just go way off and you can't really figure out why. And at that point, you know, people have invested so much money. The only thing they can think of at the end of the day is sometimes to change the marketing, you know. So you realize that you were making a comedy, but it's actually a horror film. Well, let's market it as a horror film, you know. Or you change the composer, you revoice. Sometimes in animation, they'll change the voice of the main character the last minute. Surprising how many times that's happened. And one of the famous ones is, well, change the composer and change the music. And you know, and it can have a big difference sometimes on a film, but sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't really make the film work, you know. And the film doesn't work for so many other reasons, you know. And maybe, I don't know, it's one of those things where on Pan, maybe I was overcompensating and I made it worse, for all I know. I tried to write a film. I tried to write a score that was, you know, ebullient and had the joyfulness that I thought, you know, the story should have. But it doesn't mean that it was the right way of doing it, but I probably was, you know, well enough known and had a lot of confidence, and I was certainly willing to give it a go, and that's what happened. So
yeah. And on the other side of it, I remember in the past you told me the biggest film you ever got fired off of was Armageddon.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So what is that like to be on the other end of it when you get canned? How does that feel?
Well, I mean, I honestly haven't been fired off as many as I should have, because what I do is I rewrite and rewrite. That was very early on, and it doesn't really, I didn't really have the vibe of it right for what, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer and co were going for. And I was, you know, I was really experimenting with tunes, and the tunes were probably not sounding enough like Hands for them to be very comfortable. So, you know, but I did write a lot of material in that I've, you know, that I've used in other films, and I will not say what it is, but
Right.
you know, it was an interesting process to do, and I honestly wasn't that disappointed that I didn't get it, because I knew it would be hell. I think Harry went and helped, or Trevor Rabin got it, and did a great job. And Harry Gregson Williams went and helped, but I remember seeing Harry at the time, just, you know, that was when I had a conversation with Harry, which is, you know, how do you deal with meetings with Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay? You know, they're so difficult to work with, and they both looked at me like I was mad and said, well, you know, drugs. You know, what, you don't take drugs to get with these things, you know? And yeah, you just take some muscle relaxants, and, you know, and these people can scream and shout at your cues and whatever like that, and you can just get enough information out of them to then, you know, change it a bit, and lo and behold, you go into the next meeting and you get through the movie. And it's certainly a way of doing it. I've never done it like that, but it's, you know, it's obviously a disappointment with such a big film, but I really couldn't see how I was going to make the music that they wanted. So I was kind of glad. I have always felt that I should really only go on a film that I think I know I can write the right music for. And if there's certain films that I don't know what to write, or even if I know what they want, but I just don't think I can write that, or I don't want to write that, then it's never going to work. So it's best for me not to be on it. And there's other people who will be able to do it much better than I will.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to talk about, there's two aspects to your music that I absolutely love. And this will help us kind of cover a lot of scores at once talking about this, is your use of, first of all, I want to talk about your use of percussion. I think your use of percussion is so unique to your sound. And I know we talked about this in the past a little bit, how you really discovered that kind of interest and love on drumline, and kind of you started playing with that kind of percussion more. But how do you, in your viewpoint, when a movie, how do you utilize percussion? Why do you utilize it? And what effect does it have on the music that you're doing?
I don't know. I mean, it all really probably started with my interest in, you know, my utter sort of wonder and surprise at Gabriel 4, Peter Gabriel's sort of solo album, which had all the incredible world music on it. And then listening to a lot of world music at college, and just, you know, the idea that percussion and drums is just, you know, non-melodic, I think is the thing that people make mistakes of. To me, you know, a great drumming, either if it's a single drummer or an ensemble or a kind of a highly developed programmed percussion things, are these kind of, they feel like melodies, where there's a kind of an ebb and flow of the tune, and then I just like the fact that it makes you want to dance in some way or other. It's a dance, you know, for me, I think, you know, a lot of classical music really comes out of, you know, dance forms, and I love ballet music. And then, so percussion for me is a way of just, and, you know, it's, well, there's so many different things I can say about it. You know, yes, it's a cheap way out of getting through a scene, action scenes, because, you know, you can let that run and you don't have to do as much with the orchestra. You know, to drive an orchestra through an action scene is a lot more to do. It's a lot harder. You have to, you know, unless you're going to write really, really shit music. I mean, people do that, and they write very, very dull music that is, you know, sort of works behind action films, and they always have done, and they always will. But I just used to think that, well, I can provide the kind of the rhythmic drive of it without having to worry about the intricacies of the orchestra, and I can just, you know, it's a hands thing as well, as you put giant tunes over the top of this stuff, and it's kind of a simpler way of doing it, and it seemed to be more pop, and more, you know, rock and roll, and that's obviously the approach that's been going for quite a while now. You know, some of the greatest pieces of music that I love, orchestral music, which have incredible drive and sound like action music to me, if you actually put them in an action film, they would never survive. There's too much detail. Famously, you know, William Walton wrote these amazing pieces for Battle of Britain that got rescored by Ron Goodwin, and Ron Goodwin was a brilliant writer as well, but he just wrote basically simpler tunes and simpler orchestration, and Walton's was very, very detailed, and I've played in orchestras the Walton suite of the Battle of Britain, and it's amazing music, but, you know, up against, you know, V12 you know, Rolls-Royce V12 engines that the sound effects guys recorded for the Spitfires and everything, is like, it's never going to happen if you want the excitement of that, you know. So percussion is a way of sort of providing a kind of a drive that allows the orchestra to be sort of revoiced into a different realm. It also gives you a shorthand. It gives you a modernity, allegedly. But the main reason I think I do it is because I like to try and get every scene to have a dance feel for it, as if it's a ballet. And you know, so each rhythm, whether it's on percussion or not, is often very carefully picked for this idea that, you know, life is a dance, and each scene has a kind of could have a dance rhythm to it as people dance their way through the story.
Right.
I know that sounds stupid and pretentious, but I think some of that's going on at the back of my brain, and then also just the power of it. I just love the power of percussion when it's done well. And you know, there's certain kind of rhythmic tropes that just, I think they just make me emotional. I know it sounds crazy, and you know, just the depth and the loopiness of it, not the loopy repeating, but the looping waves of,
right. Just
of the rhythm. You know, it just makes you feel. It makes my body and soul kind of squish and squeeze and do these things that I can never quite describe, which is what always interests me about any music, that I can't describe it or know how it works or why.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of it. Absolutely. And of course, another aspect of your writing that I just absolutely love is your use of choir, and just seeing how you've developed that through your career, especially recently with your concert work, A Prussian Requiem, and hearing it in How to Train Your Dragon, of course, The Hidden World, where you really kind of, beautiful choir work. To you, why do you love the human voice as an instrument, and what keeps bringing you back to kind of building that choir part of your kind of sound?
It's a cheap tool to manipulate people, I think. it's an instant humanity. It would be the way I describe it. And I remember watching when I was younger the Passion according to St. Matthew by Pasolini, I think, which is, you know, a great. I watched it at Easter. I was left alone one Easter, and watched it on TV, and it just was very, very. It had a wonderful piece by a gospel singer, which was a famous kind of gospel song, folk song, that was done with this humming choir and her on top. And I remember being just absolutely bowled over by the power of that. You know, and it's just a wonderful sound. I mean, and whether it's a classical choir or a Bulgarian choir, it's also to do with tuning as well. Choirs are really the only ensembles that can get perfect tuning. They hit the thirds and they hit the fifths in a way that, you know, when it's a great choir, they, you know, the BBC Singers, I did a concert with the BBC Singers a few years ago, and they did some pieces, and they were just so in that all the harmonics lined up in a way that you never can at a piano, because it's equal temperament, and even orchestras can't do it, because they're, you know, the 4 strings on a violin limit the amount of tuning, you know, adjustment you can make. You know, if there's a B flat chord and, you know, you've got an open string D in the middle of it, it's stuck. I mean, obviously you can play the D on another instrument, but if it was, say, the bottom G, you couldn't change it. So, and everybody sort of can tune, but there's just enough limitation on orchestras even that you don't quite ever get that harmonic lineup that you can with choirs. So, you know, I urge anyone to listen to Bulgarian music, because then you will hear Bulgarian women's choirs. You will hear everything tuned in a way that there's no other way of doing it. There's no equipment, no synths, no nothing can really do it, because it's just they're hearing each other in a way and adjusting their tuning. They have very little vibrato, so that every harmonic is moving with and against, each other's every other harmonic in a way that it just seems to explode my brain. And I think it's all. And my mother used to sing in a choir when I was a kid, so maybe it was that. I remember
Wow.
the Verdi Requiem as a kid, and then playing in orchestras with a lot of choirs. That used to be a gig you could do when you were 15, 16. Did a lot of, Brahms Requiems and Dona Nobis Pacem by Vaughan Williams is one of my favorites as well. So
Absolutely. And I know you have a lot of films under your belt with really prestigiously used choir, but honestly, I think one of the most underrated use of choir that you've had is Rat Race. I think the score is phenomenal, and it makes that movie what it is. And I love that you got to work with the Zuckers and the Zaz crew. I mean, they're one of my favorite, comedy filmmakers. So
absolutely. I still see Jerry and Janet, Jerry Zucker and his wife, wonderful wife Janet, to this day, and they are great fun. And it was just it was a dream come true, and it was, it was one of those things where I just think we realized that, and we booked the right kind of choir as well. Normally I would never book that choir. That choir is a much more sort of classical choir. You can get lots of choirs in London where they're very good at toning down the vibrato. This choir didn't. The women, they weren't. They were just, I think there were a lot of them was from the opera, a couple, from the Royal Opera House and maybe even English National, and they had some hell of vibratos going, and so it gave that kind of manic sound that I just thought was very funny, and so did Jerry, thankfully. So.
It was fantastic. I love the film so much. So in addition to scoring films, I do want to talk about, you've become a very prolific song producer as well. I mean, you've worked on films like Happy Feet, which is, just a straight musical, but also movies like El Dorado, Road to El Dorado, which has a lot of songs. And you have stuff like Alfie and Robots and Rio, and, where you have to kind of make these songs work in the fabric of the film. What is your process for producing songs, especially, you're working with someone who's maybe not yourself writing the song, giving you their work, and now you have to either rearrange or make it work in the film. How's that different from writing what you write for the score?
It's actually really great fun, and part of me thinks I could just do that alone with, if I often I like that bit much more than doing the score. And obviously Happy Feet was the big one, but I only got Happy Feet because I'd done a lot of it beforehand. And the first thing I ever did in Los Angeles for Hands was a lot of the song arrangements on Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
Lots of songs that never made it in the movie, and not the really amazing one at the front that Hands had done himself. And I loved doing that. I just thought that was wonderful. And I love the puzzle of taking a song and where everyone thinks that it's got the right kind of something to it, but it just doesn't seem to be slotting in the right way. And it can be tempo, and it can be changing the tempo to musically change it, or maybe just changing the tempo just to manage the details of the flow of the scene, or managing the key or the arrangement. We had great fun on Rio with that, and we had great fun on even Ferdinand with that. Just trying to sort of make a couple of songs Spanish enough to be in there. Songs that otherwise would have really been ignored by, I think, everybody, because it's very hard to think that. But I'm a bit shameless. I'm a shameless sort of music slut. So I love the idea that you can take any song and bend it. And if you, in the right context, you can get something very interesting in it. Like Donnie Darko, when they took, the Tears for Fears song and did a very great version that's really moody out of it. It keeps the song's still there. The darkness of the song is already in the original Tears for Fears version. It's just, it's made much more obvious, perhaps, because it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the sort of the sheen of the pop and the drive of the pop sound around it, and they've stripped it down, and things you know, things can be more than one thing.
Yeah.
So songs can say a lot, there's a lot of subtext in songs. And, you know, it's like the idiots that listen to Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen and think that's what it means. If they think it's a patriotic song, then they are not really hearing it. And that's the genius of the song, is it's a paradox. And
Yeah.
that's when music is wonderful. And songs can be wonderful, is when they have this paradox between, you know, they're one foot very clearly in one world, but then while you're enjoying that, you suddenly, it's dawning on you that it's got a depth to it, and it's got another meaning to it, and that's art. That's what makes certain things art for me, and other things not. So I love to do that, and Happy Feet was obviously just great fun, and we did.
Yeah.
I think we did 110 sessions with vocalists on that. It's,
Wow.
you know, that's what all the SAG and all the singers gave me an award for, I think, putting more of their kids through college on that movie. I think, you know, but it was great, and it really worked. And I can't say that we could have done Happy Feet anywhere else in the world, you know, other than LA. It was just that we needed so much variety of voices and things, and I do enjoy doing it. And I'm signing on to a few things that I will be doing that again in the future. You'll see.
Yeah.
Right. They take a long time, but I'm looking forward to those.
And you get to hang out with cool people, because I love this photo. I don't know if people can see, of you with Mick Jagger, and I think that's you in the back.
Oh yeah,
right there. If this is from Alfie.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's a cool thing to be part of. Like, look at that. That's awesome.
I honestly can't.
John right here.
I can't remember any of the score. The only thing I can remember is the fear of Dave Stewart going, "Why don't you play piano?" And I'm like, I'm a shit pianist, but I obviously was in a band playing soul music, and so I sat in the corner of Studio 2 with Mick Jagger and Dave Stewart, you know, who I'm both huge fans of, and they got the rest of the band was just brilliant. I remember the rhythm section was just extraordinary, and that was great fun. It was great fun, but that's what I remember from scoring that, because all the other scoring bit was like, oh God, I've got to score, you know, the rest of it was I didn't enjoy, but that bit was great fun. Yeah, and that's honestly why I got into music, was I like playing with other people. You know, I'm not really good enough. I shouldn't really have been in that room, but I managed to get away with it. But it's a wonderful experience to play music with other people, and whether or not they're geniuses like those, or even just, you know, simple, you know, your friends who are, you know, who can sort of play. You know, I played bass on stage at the Hollywood Bowl a few years back for the 20th anniversary of DreamWorks, and I had no business playing bass there, but it was great fun. We had Jack Black and a bunch of amazing musicians, and I managed to get through it, except for when my amp started to make farting noises. But that's a wonderful part of it. I agree.
Absolutely. So I just kind of I'm going to run through some quick fire questions. These are more fun, personal questions, but as we wrap things up, and then we're going to jump into some audience questions to close everything out. So let's just go with some generic questions, maybe not even film music related. Maybe they'll know more about you. What's your favorite meal, John? What's your favorite meal to eat?
Runner beans.
Runner beans. What's
runner
your
beans with butter and salt?
Nice.
That's summer in England.
What's your personal favorite movie? Like your favorite film?
Oh, it's hard. There's quite a few of them that I would, but you know, Babe, Roman Holiday, Moonstruck, Fifth Element.
Oh yes, thank you.
Well, you know, I think somewhere between all of those, and there's probably loads more that I'd want to see, but those I could see any day. You know, it's like,
yeah,
if it was on TV, I'd watch it, simply because I could always pick it up in the middle, or I could start and go all the way through it, and it would never be a chore watching that. Every other film that I can think of, you know, loads of other films I can think of I enjoyed, but I wouldn't really necessarily want to watch them again for
Right.
10 years or 20 years or ever.
List a few classical composers that everyone should go and listen to right now.
Khachaturian, Prokofiev, Haydn, Bach, Benjamin Britten, Goran Bregovic. He's not
Okay.
officially a classical composer. He's done a lot of films, but I just think he's fantastic. I think classical composers at the moment, Johnny Greenwood is
Yes.
brilliant, brilliant classical composer. You know, Anna Meredith. Anna Meredith is amazing. So have a listen to that. She's done a few films, but that's not really what she does a lot of, you know, but her classical music is extraordinary. So
Absolutely. What's your favorite color?
Oh, blue, probably. I don't know.
What's the most
I'll tell.
What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done on a project or a film?
Oh, there's so many.
Like, what's the biggest ass you've made out of yourself?
Oh God.
I love how you have to rack your brain.
Yeah. It's not because I haven't. Let's put it that.
One that you're okay to share. If not, that's fine.
Can't remember. I've been I can be a bit of a dick sometimes, and when I'm producing vocals and things like that. And I remember thinking I sounded like a complete twat when I was doing vocals with who was it, on El Dorado. I think it was with Kevin Klein and
Brana,
and yeah, and Brana. Yeah, the two of them together were doing some vocals and like that. And I remember, you know, trying to encourage them, and I remember thinking, having pressed the button, thinking, God, I just said the most stupid fucking thing to two of the greatest actors in the world. And you know, but I was on the gig, I was working, so I just had to like push it down and try and never ever remember it again until you brought it up now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll send you a bottle of scotch to drown in. What would you say is your most personal score of yours that you've written?
I don't know. I think the one that sounds like me a lot is Endurance, which is the first one.
Which is funny. Yeah, it was one of the first ones, and it's funny. I go back and listen. I'm like, it's all here. Like your kind of sonic language is all there.
Yeah, except there were no action scenes and that kind of stuff. So
right.
I don't know. I mean, you know, Dragons is probably one that sort of rolled out in a way that felt very natural and worked, I think. Endurance, you know, didn't. I that flowed as well. Most of them don't flow, but a few of them do flow, and then they probably are good at. They are naturally what I am. I think.
What is your favorite curse word?
I think it must be asshole.
Asshole.
Yeah, the rhythmicness and the pitch, the modulation that you can create in it, and how it can mean totally different things. So
shift it. And finally, you know, just speaking solely from your viewpoint, this is just kind of a human question of your time, kind of being alive on this planet, experiencing the highs and lows that life has to offer. What does life mean to you? I mean, have you cracked what the purpose of all this is for you?
Enjoying the unlikely nature of existence. I mean, the chances of us being here are just so ridiculously small.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm completely atheist, utterly and
me too. Yeah.
Atheist. But that doesn't mean that I don't absolutely glory in the beauty of the world and humanity, and just because it's so unlikely, that makes it better for me. It makes it not better. It means more because it means there's a purpose, which is I came to being by such an unlikely and unfathomably unlikely route. I should really enjoy. I should really try and enjoy this. I should allow everything I can, everything I can do with my time here. And obviously music has meant that I can try and figure out how to say that in a language that I certainly can't with words. So it's another dimension of just me saying, wow, this is I'm very lucky, and everything is kind of extraordinary. And, and that includes the painful bits as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing quite like, feeling the searing heat of sadness. But I guess the trick is to know that it's part of, an oscillation. You will see the other side of things, and joy will come. And, I know I've said this to Jerry Zucker before, after moments of great sadness, I said to him, I know you probably don't think about this much, but, after my wife died and I was at the lowest point you can imagine, just turning on the TV and watching Airplane, or starting halfway through Airplane, or Naked Gun. I think it was Naked Gun, actually. It's amazing for somebody like that to do something with their life where they can transport people. And I think comedy can transport people, storytelling can transport people. Obviously, I've not been in an industry or a business or spent my life doing things that actually do make a difference to people's lives, and there's a lot of people who help our societies and help our lives so much, and by actually doing it. But my role perhaps is to try and write music that can do a little of that, just momentarily, whether it's cinema, watching a story that touches them, or maybe even listening to the music alone, and the music can tell a story that is so wonderfully vague that they can appropriate it for any meaning they need. So I think I need to do a lot more of it, because I've been given a very, very, very lucky break here.
Well, I can assure you that you do help, because I mean, I've fallen back on your music since I was young, and especially this year, of course. I lost my father this year, so your music has helped. It does help. I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone out there who has enjoyed your music, and so I do thank you for being lucky, and that we're all alive together on this rock spinning through space, and it's just been a fantastic journey watching your career and being able to experience it. So with that, though, I do want to jump into some audience questions. So we got a first one. We have a celebrity question here from Vince DiCola, who of course is the composer of Rocky IV. John, big fan. The music to the Bourne series represented a whole new way of fusing rock and traditional styles, and it was really inspiring. What's your rock background?
Yeah. Remember we were talking about embarrassing things earlier. I mean, my rock background is, I must admit, and I will say it out loud now, is there was a certain amount of prog rock, not as much as Hans or many other composers we can talk about, but I did, and I came to it kind of late, and I didn't get too involved. So if I go backwards, there's not much, I may have accidentally flirted with a bit of Rick Wakeman occasionally, but I realized pretty quickly that I shouldn't. But I will always like, Duke by Genesis. But if you go earlier than that, if it gets too indulgent, I'm not really with you. But The Wall, and but I love The Wall. I love The Wall, but I really don't like. I have no time really for a lot of Pink Floyd's other stuff, I must admit, even though I think that Dave Gilmour is one of the great guitarists of all time. I mean, that would be the thing, is that I'm not, and Jimmy Page is one of the great guitarists. I think it's about the singing as well. I'm not a big fan of that kind of singing. Even Peter Gabriel, when he was singing with Genesis, I was like, you know, but on his own, oh, I just incredible. You know, I think the first thing I ever heard musically was probably, you know, Kate Bush, Patti Smith, Because the Night is what, that's one I'll always remember.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very particular and peculiar sort of set of certain things, and nothing, there's nobody I love everything of, you know. I love every track on Sign of the Times by Prince, but then there's loads and loads of other stuff by him. You know, it doesn't
Right.
quite
Yeah.
work for me, but you know, the things that I do love always stuck with me. So it was probably an eclectic thing, you know, everything from sort of Stevie Wonder to Bruce Springsteen to, you know, the very odd little blips. I was remembering the other day that I heard Judy Zook. Now this is really going back there, and there's a song called "Stay With Me Till Dawn," and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But the thing is, it rocks all the time on second inversions, and I'd always wondered why I loved second inversions. And it's like, who knew that a pop song in England in 1979 or whatever it was, you know, would be doing that. And it has this extraordinary string section in the middle, which is by, oh, he was a string arranger for Elton John and everybody, and can't think of his name at the moment. But and I'm thinking, oh my God, I stole so much from this song and from the string arrangement in the middle. And I just heard it again the other day. So I owe so many people specific thank yous for just certain moments of songs and things and little weird things that I remember I'd forgotten about. So the rock in me is not very rocky. It was very specific. It wasn't about the genre. I didn't like punk, but I do remember the first time I ever picked up a bass guitar, it was to try and learn how to play Peaches by the Stranglers.
Wow.
So, and yet I don't like a lot of the other stuff there. So every now and again, there's these things that would have popped up and I would have loved. But for me, the idea of rock is like, you know, but of course I love certain tracks, you know, and they mean everything to me, but I never sort of associate it as being a genre. It's just
Absolutely.
a very specific piece of music that means a lot to me, you know. So.
Right. All right. So we have another question here from Rolf Gustafsson. This is a good question. What was the incentive, I guess the idea behind using the kazoo orchestra for Chicken Run?
To piss off Jeffrey Katzenberg, I think. No, it wasn't really, but I remember the first time we tried it, he turned to me and said, "What the fuck are you doing, pal?" And then 2 weeks later, he was asking us to put more kazoos in. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a, you know, there's a lot of crazy music in my life. I remember, you know, Spike Milligan had a show, and that had a crazy piece of music on the front of it and the end of it, and I think that had some kazoo in it. And you know, there was other sort of, you know, Bonzo Doodah Dog band and things. You know, there's lots of kind of really weird things that I'd heard over the years. I'm a big fan of sort of finding strange and wonderful music that doesn't fit,
Right.
you know, outside of music, and I think it would have been things like that. It certainly wouldn't have been anything original. I've never had an original idea in my life. Obviously, we probably, it was, you know, it would be a step. It's like, okay, well, it's Escape, you know, it's a Great Escape with chickens. But then if you think about the music from the Great Escape, it was kind of based on Bridge Over the River Kwai, and that had, you know, Colonel Bogey, which was whistled. So then we probably started with whistling, and then thought, well, it might even be funnier because of beaks, for it to be, you know, it could have been physiological. It's like, well, what would chicken sound like whistling? And they do have a, you know, obviously Aardman has a great mouth thing going, but then it could have been funnier that, you know, the flappy bit could have been like look like a kazoo or something, or should sound like a kazoo. So I don't know, the randomly we got there. I don't think it was in the temp anywhere, and I don't think it was handed to us on a plate. I think we just you know, just fell into it somehow or other.
Yeah, yeah. So here we have another question from Nolan Markey. Is there anything that you haven't done musically or creatively yet that you love to do in the future? Is there anything on your bucket list that you creatively haven't done yet?
It's nothing in particular, but it's just I'd like to write better. I really would like to write something much better, you know, so that I could look at it and go, oh yeah, I'm getting the hang of this now. I mean, it just still feels like it's lumpy as hell all the time, and sometimes it just doesn't. It's not even worth listening to. But and often the rest of the time, even when you go, oh that works, and then oh that works, and then I get depressed again. So I'd like to write something better. You know, I think that would be the only thing I could say.
Well, I think you're doing pretty good. So I would love to hear some more concert work from you. And I think you talked about some ideas.
Yeah, I have some stuff going, but you know, it's all of this time we've all had, and I've pissed so much of it away. It's amazing, you know. But we'll see.
Watching tennis. No.
Yeah.
Here we have another great question from Franco Grimaldi Callo. How do you think the film scoring industry will be after the pandemic is over? And what should young composers be doing to prepare for these changes?
They should be, I think it'll be the same. I don't think it'll be different at all. The only question is, you know, how many musicians we will have lost through this. This is the worry, is that, you know, it's devastating that side of the industry. For the young composers, I'd say the thing you have to do as well is assume that you won't get as much time with an orchestra perhaps in the future, and try and figure out how to write without orchestra, you know, more effectively.
Right.
But mainly just, you know, assume that everybody has been home writing film scores. I mean, literally almost half the world probably has discovered GarageBand and can write film scores. So you're going to have to think a bit better than, you know, oh, this sounds a bit like John Williams, or this sounds a bit like Hans. You know, I'm not impressed by that at all. I mean, you just have to sound like something that I've never heard of or heard even remotely of.
Right.
And then whether I like it or not, I mean, you know, people are going to come and they're going to write, you know, some are going to write some amazing music that I would have never thought of myself, and I'll be incredibly jealous, but I'll be pleased. And then 90% of film scores and TV music is going to be bullshit that anybody could have written. And the question for anybody coming up in this industry is, you know, if you listen to very, very poor music that is getting by a composer who's getting a gig, it's very hard for me to say to you, you know, you should write better, because apparently that's what's needed. But
Right.
if you think about it, how do you get to the point? How do you jump that queue? And if you know that this music is not very good, and there's a load of people who are already doing it, and so now let's assume now that we've got 100,000 people in front of you who can write mediocre music that would work fine for TV. Well, congratulations. What are you going to do? How are you going to jump that queue? I mean, my thing would be, don't sound like that. Sound like something that nobody's ever heard before, because for every, you know, 9 projects that do sound like everybody else, there's always one that will get you the gig, that where they don't want you to sound like that. And that one is what will get you ahead. And then you can start writing really boring, dull, mediocre music for all the other things once you've got a name for yourself. But try and jump the queue by writing more interesting and more intriguing and more potent music than you certainly hear on TV.
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely. And I think a good example of that, I'm just remembering now, because Spitfire had a recent Westworld scoring competition where people could score a scene from Westworld, and the one that won, and I think it pissed a lot of people off, was I don't remember the person who won, but they did a kind of an 8-bit, almost like old school Nintendo version of the scene, and that's what won. And people are like, what the hell? But I'm just like, well, look, it stood out, it was different. Of course that wouldn't probably be what final thing would be used, but for the competition, It showed creativity and thinking outside the box. And I think people need to do a little bit more of that.
The competition was not to score the film, it was to get noticed in front of the other 11,000 people,
Right.
and that's what he did.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was thinking of putting in an entry exactly that way, which was, I thought, oh my god, there's going to be so many really boring, everybody's going to do the same shit and it'll be fine and it'll work, but you know, wouldn't it be funny? I thought, oh, I wonder if I could do the whole scene with chicken noises, you know. And then but I was too lazy. I should have done it, but that would really piss people off, and I would have done it under an assumed name as well, but
pseudonym.
Yeah.
Well, would you maybe rescore a scene from Bourne with chicken noises? I'd love to hear that.
I think I have. There is actually a great I don't know. I don't know where it has. I'll have to try and find it. There's a great moment in Lorax where we had to do the singing fish.
Yes,
you know.
I remember you showed this in your master class.
Oh, I did. Yeah, with where they were singing the tune from Bourne.
Say my names, or what's my name? What's my name?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you know, and I'd always wanted to present that to, you know, if I'd done it in a different order, so I could have presented that to Paul Greengrass for like, this is my idea for Bourne 3. You know. It just didn't quite work out.
Right. So we have another question from Eli Stewart. How do you establish trust with the director to allow you to write music that is more experimental and less cliched or manipulative? Like how does that just come, I guess, with experience, or can you kind of kick that relationship right off the bat?
Well, I mean, I probably do that by presenting a bunch of things at the very first meeting you have. I write sacrificially as well. In other words, I write things that I know won't work or won't fly, but I'm just sort of feeling everybody out and also feeling out the movie itself, see what the movie could hold. So I sometimes write a bunch of things and they could be in different directions, and some of them could be, you know, very cliched and just exactly what you'd expect, just to test everybody. You know, it's like everybody's thirst for something different, because everybody can say, oh yeah, we'd like it to be different, but they mean a 2% different, or
right.
They, you know, that's very different from, okay, I want 75% of the score not to sound like anything else, is a very different, you know, request, and people can't really articulate that. So the only way you can do it is by watching their reactions. And you know, so I try and, you know, sort of define the limits of what everybody is gonna. That's where you know, things from other that were thrown out of other films come in. There's a few pieces that I've tried in, you know, I've played in every movie first meeting I've done virtually, because they're okay, but they do a thing, and that thing I need to know that everybody's reaction to, and they almost, you know, obviously nobody likes it. And it's interesting so it's kind of like what do you call it, in a drug experiment where you have a sort of a
placebo.
Yeah, it's like a placebo.
Yeah,
not a placebo, but it's a you know, it's just saline. It's, you know, but you don't know it's the control. That's right. So you have these
the control,
that would allow everybody to sort of hear, okay, well, we could be here, but then you play some interesting things and really crazy things, and then you could sort of see the spectrum of people's reactions. That's, I think, how I've always done it.
Let's take maybe like 2 more questions here. Here's one from Mike Bridegam. Do you find that events in your life have affected the music you write and the approach that you take throughout your career? Or is anything autobiographical that would influence how you write based on what's happening currently in your personal life?
I mean, everything is, well, there's 2 things, which is everything ultimately is biographical. You pull from your life. I pull obviously from all the music I've ever heard, and I pull from the experiences I've had, and those experiences you try and sort of be a mirror for you, find the right one for the right way of identifying, like everybody in the audience is identifying with the characters or the scenes. So you relive things, you know, you sort of, you find a way to be as honest with the film as you can be with your own emotions, to the point at which that's what allows you to write music for terrible movies that don't work, because you can, if you get yourself into the right emotional place, you can look into something that does not work at all, but you can find something in your own life that will trigger you. And from that, you might be able to bring forth something good, you know. So, I mean, yeah, I do that all the time. It's a cheap sort of, it's a cheap way of getting emotion out into the music. And sometimes it's unnecessary, and, you know, but sometimes it's the most valid way I've found of being able to, I don't know, have a reaction and believe in the story and believe in the film, and try and be, you know, and try and bring something out of myself, you know, because
Right.
you're like an actor in the project. You know, the directors, you know, speak to actors, and they give them direction to act, and where to, you know, where the actors exactly find this emotion, you know, for a scene. Obviously they're trying to sort of absorb the characters, but they're often digging it out of their own lives. And so it's the same really with the composer. I'm trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it for months on end, which can be a bit exhausting. I would say that, you know, things in my life have never really affected my ability to be able to write what I needed to write at the time. I could be in a very, very miserable place, and I still, if it was joyful and it needed to be joyful, I would write it no problem, because that was actually a way of getting out of the sadness of my own life. And also the other way around, which is that I could be having a wonderful, you know, my life could have been fabulous, and you get a scene that's very emotional. And, you know, I don't remember anything wrong with my life whatsoever when I was working on United 93, which was hellish.
Oh yeah. Oh
You
my
know,
God.
so
Yeah.
I just had to, you know, it's a job. You have to get there and find a way to get there, and create something that works for that. Because whoever you are, however good a time you're having or a bad a time, there's been other times in your life that weren't that. So you can look
Right.
back and find something.
Would that equate to the more life you live, the more experiences you have to draw on, which makes you a better storyteller? Is that a fair assessment, or no?
No, I don't think so. I think by the time I was 14, I had all the emotions that I needed to write music. I just
Yeah.
didn't have the experience of how to find them, or find the music itself, or find you know, have good techniques of sort of making the music. So everything else is, you know, I always say this, at 7 years old, I learned to, I immediately understood the language of music. I heard everything
Yeah.
clearly and explicitly in music. It didn't need I didn't need to study to understand it. To write it and to play it, I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, it's taken, you know, 50 years of work to get, you know, you know, to a tenth of the way through what I wish I could express, or figure out ways of actually being able to speak that language. But understanding it's easy. Speaking it is very hard, I think.
Absolutely. And to wrap things up, let's finish with a question from our gracious host, Peter Hackman. He's wondering, how nervous were you on the scoring stage with John Williams there, watching, listening to the cues being recorded?
For what? For solo?
Bourne, no, for solo.
Solo. Well, he wasn't. What we did on that was he had a day with an orchestra in Los Angeles where he recorded a load of, you know, his ideas throughout the movie very early on, and he had his themes in that and all his orchestration, and he got to do about 7 cues, and that was amazing. He did it in one session, and he had great fun doing it, and it was all perfect stuff. Obviously, between the time we did that and the end film, the film had changed a lot, and there's a few of those cues we used exactly. None of the recordings from LA were allowed to be used, so everything was redone. I couldn't even use those recordings in the temp. We had to turn them into synth demos to use in the temp, so we could move them around. And once we turned them into synth demos, then obviously I could sort of cut in and out of them and use bits and try things out. And once it was in my system, as it were, I kind of I then took it over. So unfortunately, then we went to Abbey Road to record everything. John wasn't able to come at all. By that time he'd left it up to me, but he was there, in spirit. So I was nervous about that. But I was nervous when he was finishing the last Star Wars at Fox, the dub of it, and popped in while I was recording Call of the Wild, because first of all he popped in. And I was in the toilet, which is very often the case.
The worst place for John Williams to pop into.
Yeah, no, he was in the studio, but I'd been in the toilet. So I come out of the toilet, and I walk into the studio, and there's John Williams, and then of course, and it's lovely to see him. But of course, what are we doing that day? We're recording, I think it was 12 or 14 banjos. Not beautiful, not some of the nice orchestra stuff, not the nice choir stuff. I had 14 banjos, and John Williams walks into the studio while I'm still like just coming out the toilet. It was kind of it was a wonderful moment and a sort of a slight nightmare as well. It's like, it was lovely to see him, and I was so touched that he would come and say hello. And I was just like, oh, could you not have come yesterday when I had something nice? Did you have to come when I had 14 banjos?
You have to be like, it's the American frontier. It's this is why it's happening.
Oh, and how you explain to anyone why you have 14 banjos?
Well, John, we've run out of time for today. I want to thank you so much for being here, for talking with me again, and it's always a pleasure to sit down and talk with you. And yes, again, thank you for your time. And I'm going to throw it back to David, who's going to close us out. But I just wanted to, again, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I want to second that. I mean, John, if John Williams walks into the studio and he graces you with your presence, you've graced us with your presence today. Just the stories and the music that you shared of your life, we're just so grateful for that. So thank you so much for being our guest.
Pleasure. I hope it was useful.
Oh, I believe it was. Thank you, Kaya, for doing a great job of moderating too, and a special thanks to Fans of Film Music and Peter Hackman for being part of this event and pulling it together. So that's all I have to say. I wish everybody good health and success. Hope to see you at future events. Thank you again, John. Thank you, Kaya. It's been really entertaining this morning and inspiring too. So everybody have a great weekend. Take care.